Well, hi there. Welcome back. My name is Megan Sumrell. I'm a time management expert for women, and I'm on a mission to bring work-life harmony into homes all over the world. Let me ask you this. If you are married or have a significant other or cohabitate with someone, do you think that you would have work-life harmony if you chose to work together? Because I know my initial reaction every time I hear that is a resounding, oh, heck no. My spouse and I could never do that. But I continue to meet people that have. And I'm excited to have Lindsey here onto the show today because her and her husband have built a massive business together. And she is going to be sharing some of that journey and some of the tips for how to work together successfully. But here's the cool part about it. I firmly believe that this applies to just running a household because, in a way, that's why I always call myself the COO of our home. We are kind of running a business here with keeping everything, schedules, house maintenance, all of that up and running. I'm excited for you all to meet Lindsey. I want you to really pay attention to some of the key things that she's going to mention here that kind of make that relationship successful and allow them to work together. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Work Life Harmony Podcast. I have a new guest today that I am very intrigued to chat with, Lindsey Epperly. I'm going to let her introduce herself here in a moment. But the reason I'm really excited about this conversation is we're going to be talking about like how to work successfully with your spouse. And from her angle, it is actually working in business together. But I think it's really important for us to have this conversation because if you running a household, two people living in a home together, to me, that is working together, right? And I'm really interested to hear about this story because as I shared with Lindsey, the thought of my husband and I working together, like I don't think we'd make it through one 8-hour day without killing one another. So, Lindsey, welcome to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself and then we will get chatting.
Thank you, Megan. I get that a lot about how people feel about working with their spouses. They immediately go into imagining what that would be like. And so I'm excited to talk about why it has worked for us, what we've done right, what we've done wrong. But just to share a little bit more, I'm Lindsey Epperly. I own Jetset World Travel and I host the podcast called Who Made You the Boss? And I love pouring into entrepreneurs, pouring into individuals who kind of want to assess what it means to tackle the illusion of control in their own life, right? Because I think that often happens. And maybe even us working together is evidence of that. It's just ways that I can make sure everything makes sense in my dominion and all the lessons I had to learn when it was evident to me that life is out of our control. And here's how we have to embrace it.
Yeah. And I think, for so many of our listeners, I hear this a lot, like it's almost particularly as women, the more overwhelmed we get, the more roles and responsibilities we absorb, the tighter our clutch on that desire for control is, right? Like how many times, and I'm guilty of this, do I say to myself, it's just better if I do it because then I have control. It's done the way I want it done. But then I pay the price of being stuck in a place of being overwhelmed, right? So part of it means we have to learn how to relinquish some of that, which is not easy
And
at all.
sometimes life teaches us that whether we're ready for it or not. And I know you mentioned your listeners are well beyond just entrepreneurs. They're individuals who all feel this every day. And I really learned in business first, but then very quickly learned it in life in general, that the tighter you cling, the slower you'll grow. And that
Mm.
lesson has played itself out in my business life, in my home life, as I become a mom, like all the things.
Wow. God, that's such a powerful, the tighter you cling,
Mhm.
the slower
This,
you grow.
yeah.
I even just had that visual of like a plant or a flower being put into a tiny box, right? And
Yeah.
it can't flourish. That's really
Yeah.
powerful. Wow.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to kind of share how you and your husband first landed in now working together and what that
Yeah.
journey looked like.
So it's very funny. So I founded my company, which is now known as Jetset World Travel. We turned 10 this year, but I had been in the travel industry
Now,
for,
for
yeah,
listeners, I want them to understand the size of a business you are running here. Share a little bit about
yeah,
how large your team is. Like, this is not I'm doing this in 30 minutes a day
yeah.
company.
Yeah, it's grown beyond my wildest imagination. It's
Yes.
really cool. We are now at 80 team members, and we made the Inc.
Eight.
5000 list of the fastest
Wow.
growing privately held companies in America.
Congratulations. All right.
Thank
So
you.
I just wanted to kind of set that stage for our listeners. This
Yeah.
is a massive company that you are
Thank
running
you.
here. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it's it's a lot of fun. That is another time and another place, right? When we dive into all of those ins and outs. But the story of myself and Jeremy, we actually had known each other in college. We met at a potluck. We tried to date. I was a year older. I graduated. We just stayed friends. And he was always very attracted to this idea of working in the travel industry to the point where I remember he applied for a job with me as a friend. And I was like, no, no, thank you. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm over here building my own thing. Fast
right.
forward to we fall in love. It's one of those like timing is everything. The person you're supposed to be with was right in front of you this entire time. And we were engaged. And I'll never forget the moment that this happened. We were in the kitchen. We're like, talking about our wedding registry, talking about. But what had happened that day is my key right hand employee had decided to abruptly just change industries. And I just thought, this is
Oh,
going to destroy me. It's like the early stages of building a business where you really, really rely on everyone. Every single person's wearing all the hats. And
right.
Jeremy, I'm like cutting vegetables. And Jeremy goes, well, what if I applied for the position? And I was like, absolutely not. No, I mean, like, we want to go forward with this marriage and stay together.
All right.
So,
I'm glad to hear that your initial thought was like, oh, hell
oh,
no.
hell no. Exactly. I'm like, don't make me come any closer with this knife. So we're cutting vegetables. We're still talking about it. He's like, but just hear me out. So early on in our relationship, we had identified our core values. We enjoy being present. We enjoy being playful. We chase the fun. We make our choices. Choice is a huge core value of ours. And he said, what if we got to choose this? And it could give us the freedom and flexibility we have always wanted. And like, what's the worst that could happen? I'm like, well, the worst that could happen is we could fall apart in all the ways.
Right. Yeah.
You can wreck my business and we can wreck each other. But other than that, maybe it's worth a shot to see if it can get us freedom and flexibility. So I even conducted interviews. Jeremy showed up to the Starbucks in his suit with a resume and said, consider me, please consider this. And I
Wow.
finally considered it. And thank God I did.
I love that you even said that you didn't treat the hiring of this any different than if it were somebody else coming instead of just a knee jerk, yeah, let me figure out a way for, to fit you into the business and
Yeah.
all of that. So from the beginning, were there clear roles, responsibilities, and boundaries between that for the two of you?
That is an excellent question. And this is where we got a lot of things wrong in the beginning. With humility, Jeremy accepted a position as an assistant, right? He's not coming in full
Right.
blown nepotism and becoming a business partner. And I also had no interest in having a partner at the time. Again, the tighter you cling, the slower you'll grow. I have built this
Right.
baby. It is my business. It is mine. And over the course of time, it became evident that we did not know the lanes that we were in. It also became evident that work Lindsey and work Jeremy were not in love like home Lindsey and home Jeremy. We were two different people at work, as most
Mhm.
people are. You
Do
don't
you think
get to
that's a
see.
bad thing or a good thing?
I think it's a good thing
Yeah.
because
Okay. I figured.
yeah, I think it gets you to where you need to be in your career. And I think people would probably admit that to themselves about their own personas. It's
Mhm.
just that you probably don't interact with your partner every day in your work life. So you don't really get to
Right.
see the differences. But for us, those differences were glaring. And they were quick lessons of we've got to learn to respect each other from a professional standpoint, or else this is truly not going to work. And what forced our hand, Megan, what really made us learn that what our lanes are, what our respect is, what eventually made me say, I do need a partner, actually, is that we were 5 months pregnant with a home under contract, March of 2020. And that is not the time of life to be in the travel industry.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah,
it was
for
decimated.
sure. Yeah. Interesting. Now, I was thinking about, this line of boundaries, roles, responsibilities, and thinking about it from the outside of work life and into home life, because now it's not just the two of you anymore. Plus, you still have the business. What, if anything, did you learn in navigating that through business together that you've applied in how you essentially work together in the home? Because that is almost like running our own mini business. It feels like I always jokingly call myself the COO of our house, right? I'm the operational officer of the schedules and the things and the appointments and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And for us, we both work from home as well. And so it is very easy for all of it to bleed together. I think some of the actionable items that we learned that we still to this day implement are, and you'll appreciate this from a productivity standpoint, right? It's the matter of we would just very easily come to each other and derail one another's days with, oh, I have to talk to you about this. Oh, I need to talk about, and it could be about, Mila, our daughter has an appointment and I need you to take her to it. Or it could be, oh, by the way, that employee asked about a raise when you talk about, like it could be any side of this gamut. And
Right.
imagine you are in the zone, you are getting your work done, and then your partner, in all sense of the word, comes in and gives you this like bomb dropped that takes you out of that mode. And so we've really had to be intentional. We have Friday dates that are our coffee dates where we kind of parking lot almost every idea that is not a time sensitive emergency. And we
Right.
know that is where we can go and talk. So that way we're being respectful to one another and what our lanes are, because I know if I interrupt his deep flow of work, well, that's actually taking away from what he's able to bring to the household and to the business and to the family, and vice
Mm.
versa.
During that Friday date, is that just work stuff or is it home stuff as well?
It is anything and everything. It is, we call it parking lot. It is the parking lot
Okay.
for the ideas that we need to discuss.
Okay, I love that. And I'm trying to think like at home, it's interesting because my husband works from home as well. He's 2 stories up from me. Tokyo, we don't work together in business,
Yeah.
but I have noticed because I work right outside the kitchen, there's oftentimes, he'll pop down for lunch and it's the quick pop in of personal. And so we have kind of a signal of my little glass doors closed, meaning
Mm,
like this is not a time to pop in if you happen to come downstairs.
yeah.
And I think for people where everybody's at home, having some kind of visual indicator to help with that is
Yes.
really, really important.
That is really interesting. The visual indicator, something we've developed. And this is the dorkiest thing. I don't know that we've even admitted this to our team, but early on when we would kind of interrupt each other and someone's like, God, I'm in the middle of a sentence. I can't, please don't interrupt me in the middle of a sentence. You know how, like, if you're at a hotel lobby and there's a bell and you ding it, like to get service. So we will ding. We will say, I have a ding, ding, and just
Interesting.
and just wait until your ding is acknowledged because you don't want to interrupt that person's workflow. But I
Right,
have something
right.
pressing that we need to talk about.
So knowing that, now do you guys attempt to kind of have work hours that are set since you're both at home and then work's done and now it's family time?
Yes. Yeah, we
Okay.
do. I think it's so important for us to be able to be present with our kids. I have a 1-year-old almost and a 3.5-year-old. And, this stage of life is just very precious, very meaningful. Any stage of life is, of course.
Right.
But we're very intentional about delineating that work and home life balance.
So what are some things that you guys have navigated through like figuring out how to work together in business that translates over into how you work together, in the home and managing children and the entire home and everything that goes along with it?
Yeah, I think that learning one another's unique strengths, and this is something that's so important as a human, whether you're doing this in the context of your partner or not, right? It's
Mhm.
knowing that just because you can doesn't mean you are called to do whatever it is that you feel really strongly about. That is your purpose. As we learn that about one another, we're in our 30s. This is still a growing like a work in progress. Um, we're really thoughtful about how we help one another protect our time, whether that is home life or work life. And so, for instance, the number one role that cannot be replaced in home life is mom and dad. Nothing
Right.
else can ever fill that gap. And so it's important to protect the time that we are mom and dad. And then for me, myself, I've been pursuing a lot of the goal in the company this year is to amplify, is to get our voice and our story out. And for me, I enjoy speaking, I enjoy writing, I enjoy communicating. That is something that I feel is a purposeful activity for me. And we recently had an instance in the business where there was an opportunity for me to step further back into the weeds of the business. And Jeremy was like, yeah, you can, but does that mean you should? And so just the helpfulness of challenging one another around, yeah, that's great, but you're going to be going back to Lindsey 5 years ago versus Lindsey now and what she wants and what she knows in her heart is her purpose. So being able to remind one another of that, like what are our specific callings and our unique gifts, that has been huge.
One of the things I keep hearing over and over again, which it's so easy to, it sounds so obvious, but it's so easy to not do, is it sounds like there is just a lot of constant communication between the
Oh,
two of you around these are our core values for home for business. This is what's important to me. This is what's important to you. Because in the day-to-day, just hustle and bustle of life, I think it very often we know inside like the things that are important to us, but how we choose to communicate that externally to the people with which we live, so often that doesn't happen. And so there can be that clash or that feeling of lack of support when at the end of the day, they're like, I had no idea. Like maybe, what
Totally.
if he had no idea that you were wanting to amplify and speak and do all of that? Then there wouldn't have been that opportunity to support that decision around where your time should go.
Yes. I, I think it's really important to kind of camp out on this too, because we probably over communicate to the point where if the outside looking in, someone would be like, that is asinine. Now they are just going into the little bitty nuances and like, but you have to. And Jeremy actually came up with a motto during the pandemic as we were leading this team, as we were kind of like doubling down and saying, all right, we're going to walk away from our home in order to save our business. We know that we can grow this thing. And the motto was silence breeds insecurity. And so every day we were communicating with the team. We were communicating with each other because if you don't over communicate, the other person starts with the story in their head, as Brene Brown says, right? Like, what is the story
Right.
in your head that you are creating that the other person is not communicating?
So, so good. Oh my goodness. Now, if anyone listening is considering working, two different scenarios. One, bringing their spouse into business or, even a really good friend or a family member, right? Or maybe they're feeling like the household in and amongst itself is kind of out of control and we need to get some like co work here. Where do you think people should start? What are some of those initial conversations to get the ball moving in a healthy working together way?
That's a really good question, right? What could I go back and tell Lindsey chopping vegetables in the kitchen when when Jeremy applied for the job? Um, I think it's really important to go back to those values, the values and the goal, right? So the knowing who you are and what is important to you, and also knowing where you are going. And so my advice to others would be, if you're pursuing this because the goal is something kind of frivolous, like something that's not really super important to you, right? Like if it's only for financial gain, that's fine if that's your interest. But like a lot of times those types of goals will fall short because of the actual emotional grunt work it takes to put into getting there. So for us, our goal again was freedom and flexibility. So, well, if pursuing this lifestyle together helps us reach that goal, and then we can do that for our family as we're building our family. And so, for instance, this summer, we're able to spend the entire summer abroad because of what we've been able to build here, and we can run the company while we are abroad. So that's freedom and flexibility to me. That's a very clear sign that we have been working toward this goal and it is working for us.
Mhm. So a shared unified vision and goal of
Yes.
what you're after.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so good. And I think, again, like you said, of course, there needs to be money to have that. You can't go spend a
Yeah.
summer abroad if you can't afford to do it. But it was a deeper, because it's one thing to just say, hey, we're going to make this money to make this money, but why? What is the
Yes.
underlying reason for that? I think that really creates a different, powerful story
Yeah,
there.
it does. You're not likely to abandon that why. And honestly for us, that was what kept us going through our industry's greatest crisis is we knew our why. And it would have been really easy for us to press the big red button of panic and say, all right, Jeremy needs to go back to his job as a financial analyst. He made great money there. We are making negative money here as this business is bleeding during a crisis. But
Yeah,
we knew we would ask ourselves, but are we ready to give up on that goal and that dream? And we just weren't ready to walk away.
so good. Now, are there any lessons learned? I learn everything the hard way. That seems the
Mhm.
way I go through
Mhm.
life. So are there any lessons learned that you would want to share with someone that is maybe just starting on this, where they're going to be working with their spouse of like, ooh, learn this one the tough way. Here's what I would recommend.
Yeah, you know what? I actually wrote down some ideas because I thought, Jeremy and I have really just enjoyed coming up. And I actually even asked him, like, what are some of your favorite practices that we have gotten into?
Yeah.
And one is something we call change of scenery. And I've heard this in like therapy speak, but it works so well in both the business and home perspective. But those times where you're talking with your significant other and you just kind of get in like a circular pattern. It's like a tense conversation, you're disagreeing, and it's just going around. We have found that almost every single time we get in that, you're sitting in the same place that you usually sit in. You have your preferred spots on the couch or in the kitchen and all of that.
Yep.
And And it helps so much. One of us will say, okay, we're not getting anywhere, change of scenery. And so it's either we take a 5-minute break and we then go for a walk, or we just go immediately on that walk. We change what we're looking around. And that actually changes the way that we approach these
Very
issues and
smart.
these disagreements. And so, I mean, just one thing that we've had to learn over the years is the ability to call change of scenery and respect one another when they do it of, listen, we're not going to get this fixed here. Let's do a change of scenery.
Oh, I like that a lot. And it's funny. I even think about sometimes realizing there are conversations that, we need to have, my husband and I, for family matters or whatever. And I'll have that little knowing, like, not tonight, or, hey, let's wait till we can get out to dinner or something and just get out of the grind of day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, it's incredible how much your rut kind of like lives in your body, that you don't realize you're just going into that routine. And that routine sometimes is even a bit like heels dug in. I want it my way. And so changing that perspective oftentimes allows you to actually embrace what someone else is bringing to the table.
So good. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. You've given me a different view of, like, maybe there would be a day that my husband joins the Pink Bee. I don't know.
You
I
never
still am pretty
know.
sure probably not, but it allows me to view it differently,
Mhm.
of like, hey, we have some common goals and desires that we want for our life. And what if there was a way where
Yeah.
it was all in support of that? I think it would paint a very different environment. Now, check in with me in 5 years. I think we'll
I can't wait. We'll do a reverse interview and you can tell me how it's going.
yeah, because he'll jokingly every now and then he'll be like, maybe I'll just quit and come work for you. And they both look at each other and we both just start laughing. We're like, no.
You never know. What I've found, Megan, is so funny. I run a travel agency. And so like part of our business model is end traveler, but also part of our business model is serving travel advisors. And we now have multiple travel advisors whose partners have quit their job to come join them. So I find it a little bit
Really
contagious.
interesting. Yeah, I could see that, because it's almost, let's double down and do this one thing together, instead of I can't imagine the intensity in a home of each person being their own entrepreneur running their own business. That would probably be a lot to
Totally. You
absorb as well.
know, what would feel that way too is in a traditional 9 to 5 type of setting, or even as, entrepreneurs, two different roles, two different jobs, two different visions, you only kind of get like a 25% glimpse into what your other half actually does throughout the day.
Absolutely.
So it is kind of
Absolutely.
interesting to have more visibility.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting.
Like
All
when
right.
they
Well, now,
talk about like this
maybe
person
I
and
won't
their, yeah.
say hell no anymore. Maybe it'll turn into a
Probably not.
perhaps.
I appreciate the optimism.
Yeah, it's giving me a different way of thinking about it. And plus it's making me realize, one of the things I teach inside all my planning stuff is we always start with, especially when we're doing that longer term strategic quarterly annual planning, is establishing what are our core values.
Mm,
And we review those every single quarter inside the planning community, to ensure that what's on our calendar is reflecting correctly what those
yes.
core values are. And I think it's so important to, back to what we've been talking about, of that communication, of establishing
Yeah.
that in your home and in your business, and
Yeah.
reviewing those to say, does this still feel right? Is our time in alignment with what we said was important to us?
Yes. Do you encourage people to do that with their partner as well?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
they do it individually, but then it's,
Mhm.
I usually encourage, and you share this out, have some family core
Yes.
values, have things that are
Yes.
important. And I think people overthink it. I think they think it needs to be this huge life changing, and, two very small ones in our family is, we eat dinner together and we have a lot of music in our house. Like, music fills our home with joy. And so whether it's,
Yes.
we all play some sort of instrument that's usually on downstairs in the evening and all of that. So again, it doesn't need to be, I'm going to solve world hunger. While
Yeah.
great, they can be just the things that kind of center and ground you and give you that feeling of joy.
I love that. I love that. And you probably have people regularly go back to the conversation and say, what are these goals now? What are these dreams now? Like, I think it's important to kind of, much like a business plan, like it shouldn't just live in a
Exactly.
drawer somewhere. It should be actively being updated as you grow too.
And
So
those are in that, like, the very first page of my planner. On the backside is, these are
yes,
my core values for the year. And so I'm seeing them
yes,
regularly. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, well, good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people learn more about you and about your amazing business as well?
Thank you for asking. Yes, I love connecting with people. I love hearing stories. I would encourage people to find me on Instagram or LinkedIn, Lindsey Epperly.
We'll
You can
have the link in
follow.
the show notes too,
Yes.
everybody. So yeah.
Thank you. Jetset World Travel is the company. So if you're looking for some travel planning help, you know where to find us. And then I also run a podcast called Who Made You the Boss, where we talk a lot about imposter syndrome and burnout and the kind of gremlins that get in our head in a modern professional workplace, whether you're an entrepreneur or not,
Oh
all the
yeah,
things that we deal with, right, on a professional level these days.
for sure. Yep. Oh, thank you so much. It has been such a pleasure. And now you've got me excited about thinking about some future trips maybe we need to plan.
Yes, please. You let me know. Thanks, Megan. This has been
All
fun.
right. Thanks.